Hey, I'm Sam Lake from Remedy, and this is Tomorrow with Rovio podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tomorrow with Rovio podcast. I'm your host, Ben Mattis. Really exciting episode today for two reasons. First of all, it's the second to last episode of season 1. We'll come back with one last year in review episode just before Christmas. Then we'll wrap up season 1 and then come back in 2022 with a whole new set of episodes. And, looking forward to diving into that. I hope you'll join us for season 2. But the other reason why this episode is so exciting is because of our guest. If you've played PC or console games for any number of years, chances are you've played a Remedy title. You played Max Payne, you've played Control, you've played Alan Wake, you played Quantum Break. I mean, these are incredibly popular, incredibly successful games. And my guest today, Sam Lake, is the creative director and sort of head writer at Remedy and has been involved in all of those projects. So just hearing, the thoughts and the kind of creative process of someone, like Sam, who's been involved in such incredibly big, important projects was really exciting for me. And hopefully you get a kick out of that. But the other reason why I think you'll like this is because Sam has really interesting insights across what it means to have a highly engaged community and how to keep community engaged and encourage them to debate and theorize and analyze and dig into your game world, which is really exciting, and to hear how much he cares about the fan community and all of their thoughts and all of their sort of fan fiction, etc. To me was really rewarding and exciting to hear that. Second of all, if you've ever played a Remedy game, you've probably noticed an Easter egg. They're amazing at Easter eggs. Their world building is, industry class. And those Easter eggs really help create this sensation of a larger world beyond the game into something bigger, not just the forums and Reddit and kind of fan debates and fan theories, but somehow a larger connected world, which frankly, in a lot of ways feels like a precursor to some of the conversations that I've been having throughout the year on things like the metaverse or multiverse or, what have you. So it's really interesting to me to hear Sam talk about the Remedy connected universe, which is kind of like their own little metaverse that's connecting together through canon and narrative and other fashions some of the games that they have built in their past and many of the games that they'll be building in the future. And, in a lot of my other interviews, I talked with people who think about the sort of narrative side of the metaverse. And I've had some guests who think that that's amazing and some guests who think that that's a huge challenge. And to hear Sam's perspective on all of that was very, very interesting. So please enjoy this interview with Sam Lake, the creative director and head writer for Remedy Entertainment, on everything and anything to do with the creative process, the writing process, the narrative process, the metaversal connected universe process behind many of Remedy's most fantastic titles. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoy. Great to have you. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an interview that we've been talking about and thinking about for quite a few months here on the Rovio side. So we're really excited about this one. And I guess without further ado, we will jump in. We always start with the intros, obviously sort of painting a little bit of a picture of sort of who you are and kind of what you've done and that sort of thing. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners, please?
Hello, I'm Sam Lake. I'm the creative director at Remedy. And I mean, Remedy has been around for 26 plus years, and I've been here almost from the beginning.
Almost
Not quite, but almost. I was asked by a good friend of mine, good childhood friend of mine, Petri Järvilehto, who was one of the founders of Remedy, to come in and write some texts for Remedy's first game, Death Rally. I was at Helsinki University at the time studying the English language and literature. stories and writing have always been my passion, storytelling. And back then I was imagining myself writing novels at some point. And then I ended up being tracked into video games, and I'm on that detour still today.
The industry got its claws in you, and there's no escape.
Yes. Like happily enough, because I mean, I think that life overall is this strange mix of, lucky happenings that you can't possibly plan on, and then your own desires, and here we ended up combining them. It was exciting opportunity
and fate at the same time.
Yes, it was exciting. I mean, I had played computer games like since being a teenager on like Commodore 64 was my first machine, and I loved playing the games. Maybe I had ended up straying away from computer games and video games a bit. I was playing tabletop role-playing games a lot, and actually writing related to that quite a bit at that time. And this seemed like an awesome opportunity. And then kind of like Death Rally didn't have a story, but immediately then the next game and brainstorming potential for next games, I was very much pushing the idea that we can do a lot more with story and storytelling. Right. And here we are. Yes.
So in your 25 years at Remedy, you've been credited with lots of different components of a game production. And while the broad theme of this podcast is the future of entertainment, so we've had some movie people on and some, whatever. We've had people who sort of sit broadly in entertainment. By far, the majority of our guests have been game developers, and my assumption is that the majority of our listeners are probably game developers. So you can get deep into the sort of, I think, whatever the technical terms and the vernaculars of game development, and I think that'll be fine with our audience. But can you talk a little bit about the different hats that you've worn while at Remedy? Creative direction versus executive production versus narrative, etc. Because you've sort of done a lot, and I'm wondering, has it always been the same, or have there been different areas that you've explored, or some areas that you've found yourself drawn to on one game versus another?
Yeah, I suppose that how I see myself more than anything is a storyteller. And that is the kind of like underneath all of these different things. I kind of see it as one thing in a way. Yes, being a writer is a big part of it to me as a starting point. But I've been involved in the majority of concepting and dreaming up the vision for our game experiences. Usually we have a very small group of people figuring out what a game could be. Mm-hmm. And traditionally, from Max Payne on, the story and the characters, and with that, the world has been a crucial part of that.
Absolutely.
From kind of the very early first steps of the experience, like thinking what this experience is about has always been a lot about what the story is about, what the characters are about, and who is the main character, and what is the journey there. So that has always been there as a key component. I love to be involved in too much, maybe, in all the steps on the way. So coming up with this idea of what this experience is, and making sure that the idea of the game is very much married to the idea of the character and the story, but then also writing that story, writing the actual screenplay, and then being involved in finding the actors for it, and kind of like figuring out the cinematography of the cutscenes. I do it mainly on the page, but then discuss about
Absolutely.
it with our actual cinematographer and performance director. And then even to the point of absolutely loving, getting huge kicks out of by hand doing some, detailed props that Easter egg level things that you end up finding as part of this experience.
We'll talk a lot about Easter eggs.
We have brilliant artists like, at the Remedy. I still love to do silly things like in Control, our recent game, in this government office complex, you find whiteboards that have these cryptic
I remember reading those.
scribblings. And I did a bunch of them on an actual whiteboard, and then there was a photo taken, and it's placed in there. And
are you credited as an artist though?
No,
I didn't
no. But I just love to be kind of like there on this journey from the high level concept, and then these small bits and pieces that nobody really misses, or nobody is like scheduling them in, or I just like feel that when I have an opportunity, hey, I did this, can we still put this maybe quickly in? So yeah, I mean, it's the, and to me, like, all of this is about the experience and about the story. It's the high level, it's the actual expensive big cutscenes, it's the choice of music, and how does that affect the storytelling. And it's these small bits hidden in that somebody can discover.
There's the character narrative, obviously, but there's also the world narrative, and then there's the ambience that ties it all together. And the stories that you tell through your world design are hand in hand with the words that come out of the characters' mouths, and it really creates a cohesive whole. Absolutely.
And that to me is a big part of fascination for games as a storytelling, is the fact that they are very deep experiences, in the sense that we can mix mediums.
Absolutely.
And they all have their place in this world, and in a very unique way. Out of these different aspects and fragments, we are building an emotional experience that kind of comes together in different ways for different players, depending on what they pick up and explore and what they ignore. But it should still be something that kind of works for everybody, slightly as a different experience. And that's the beauty of it, I feel.
And so, I mean, clearly, for 25 years, narrative has been a pillar, a cornerstone, a calling card. It has been, a major selling point of Remedy games. And I think most people who've played a Remedy game would probably say that. That's my assumption. Do you think do you feel like Remedy makes games differently than other developers? Lots of people say we put story front and center. Not all, obviously, but lots of people do. Do you feel like you guys do it differently?
It's an interesting question. Like, I think that we do it less differently maybe these days than early on. I feel that the growth in ambition of storytelling and quality of storytelling in games has gone forward in huge leaps.
I agree.
Through the time I have been in the industry, which is wonderful. I think that makes video games, to me, really exciting. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some ways, when we were starting out and we were creating Max Payne's and Alan Wake, within that time frame, I feel that we were pioneering certain things. And I mean, there was interesting and ambitious work obviously happening globally all around related to video games. But I do feel that we managed to be among the first to take this kind of a more action-oriented genre of games and insert a deeper story into it than had been done before. Certainly there were already role-playing games. Certainly there were more adventure games that did have storytelling as a clear component. For action games, it tended to be more like this, well, Space Marine and go.
Here's some zombies, here's a gun.
Go. But it was these discussions early on with Max Payne, this idea that we can totally do an ambitious story within the framework of action game. And then just like figuring out, well, how do we do that? And starting that journey of exploration that I feel that we are still on was, well, what are our storytelling methods and tools, and what are the innovations that we can do there? What is the exploration, that new things that we want to try out? And that to me has been that this constant exploration that fascinates me a lot, which started out with, well, back when we were in late 90s, when we were working on Max Payne, cutscenes were very, very crude.
Yes.
And so from that perspective, we need to find another way of telling an ambitious story. If we use cutscenes, it's not going to be sophisticated.
Yeah.
So looking into other mediums for what could it be, and me being a big comic book fan, I felt that, hey, we could use graphic novel screens and we could combine that with an audio play, essentially. And we could do a very high quality story. Plus, as comic books in a medium have, you tend to be in your imagination feeling the bits between the panels.
Absolutely.
And kind of the end experience ends up being, in a good comic book, much more than these still images and word bubbles. You are drawn into the world and it's happening in your head. And then on top of that, radio plays as another thing, as a child listening to wonderful radio plays like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or The Hobbit or these kinds of things, which were wonderful experiences.
Reborn now with podcasts, right?
Yes, which I'm really happy. I love radio play as a medium, but yeah, it was dying, but now happily it's back. But combining these, it already felt like, yeah, wonderful. We can do an ambitious story,
That's amazing.
and that did feel like we were bringing into games at that point of time, into action games, something that was very exciting and fresh to the audience.
So, okay, I'm going to skip ahead a question then, because you're talking on a subject that I was going to get into a little bit later, but I'll bring it up now to continue the theme you're on. So obviously between Max Payne and Control, the industry has evolved. As you said, lots more people have sort of gotten into the sophisticated storytelling inside of an action game space. I mean, whatever, God of War and like whatever. So there's lots of other people who can kind of sit in that space. And yet in certain places, what we've seen is an improvement in execution, right? So cutscenes have gotten better and better and better. And whatever, voice acting has gotten better and better and better. And the transitions between action and say linear has gotten smoother and smoother and smoother, right? To the point where, when Naughty Dog does it, you can't even see it, right? It's magic, right? Somehow they've worked their technical magic and it's just poof, it's so seamless. It blows my mind even to this day. So
ton of work.
Absolutely.
Huge budget.
Yeah.
Incredible resources, and it's magic. Yes,
and it's magic. The magic of resources and love and labor.
Yes, but wonderful vision to drive it as well, of course.
Yeah. So my point is less about quality of execution and more about trying something completely new, right? So when you guys did, whatever, the graphic novel or the radio play format inside of, Max Payne, that was sort of somewhat new. Like it hadn't really been done a lot inside of games. And that was a new thing. And like whenever I can't remember what it was, but like the first action game that had like integrated cutscenes, that was like a new thing. But now cutscenes have iterated, right? So in the last, whatever, 5-10 years, have there been major innovations inside of game narrative that have caught your attention, that are like, oh, that's a new thing, and I can't wait to see where that goes?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening all the time, and it is exciting. I get really excited about maybe smaller indie games doing
Yes.
experimental storytelling, and there are plenty of those, which is wonderful, and because that the reality of it, and you can see it in movie industry as an example, that the bigger the budget grows, the more cautious everybody gets, that you need to kind of like make sure that this will succeed, and otherwise it's gonna be bad for everybody. And thus, in some ways, the like wild risk taking, and I mean sometimes it happens, and but less, and it's very understandable. But as a contrast to that, if we look at the smaller indie games, that's the strength there. You need to be wildly experimental in order to kind of potentially break through, but it's very liberating, and there can be all kinds of and how it usually goes when somebody does break through, and there was something very interesting being done. We'll go forward a few years, and suddenly we are seeing these big games adopt these ideas.
That, of course, right? Yes. They draw inspiration from it.
Which for the industry overall, for video games, that is vital. I feel that we have this. So indie games are precious and really, really important overall. To me, as a creator at Remedy, like I feel that we have been growing a lot as a company. Like we are 300 people these days. We have multiple game projects going on these days. It used to be always just one project, but now we have multiple. And I kind of see us being in that interesting middle position, is that just purely on scope and purely on quality, we can't quite get to where these absolutely massive productions can, but we can be a bit of experimental in this still, and we can try out, sometimes slightly crazy ideas, or if not crazy ideas on the level of how it's done, at least on what is being done and what the concept is.
Cool.
And trying to retain that, I feel, is a big part of how I see the exciting parts of being the creative director, and trying to kind of always look for maybe new mediums to incorporate into the game experiences we create, or just like new genres of story, or new types of stylized settings, or cool. Elements like that.
So I guess closing on the evolution of game narrative question or theme, I wonder how you personally think about, or if you think about, the impact your story has on the audience. So, obviously, as, let's say you're an author, you write a book, and you publish that book and people read your book. You might get fan letters, you might get people coming up into the street and saying, oh my God, this was so impactful. I loved it so much. And of course you get sales numbers, right? So, oh, okay, I sold 10,000 copies. So, okay, I'm great. But clearly in the world of, for example, mobile gaming, and all the analytics and the data, like we can, generally speaking, that's kind of part of the difference, right? Is there's super granular sort of visibility on stuff. And so generally speaking, one of the divides is like, well, in mobile, kind of everything is quantified, and, whatever. In console, a little bit less. And I guess in magazines and books kind of even less. So do you ever think about how to measure the impact of your narrative? Like, do you go and check how much control fan fiction there is, or how active the I don't know slash Max Payne Reddit forum still is in order to see, does checking or somehow measuring narrative impact come into your worldview at all? Or is it more like, I wrote my story, I told my story, and now I'm on to my next story?
I mean, these days, social media bringing the audience much closer to us in everything, which I feel is part of the work as well, to be present there in some ways.
Mm-hmm. It can be hard to read the comments, but
yeah, I going way back, I like to Max Payne, and that was in before social media, really, but we had ton of forums, obviously, with lively discussions.
That's a nice way to put it.
Starting out, obviously, like getting your first big story out there, and then being really interested what people think about it, and going online and reading all kinds of comments. Being exposed to all of that as suddenly, because Max Payne ended up being a really big success.
Yes.
And I hadn't, beyond Death Rally, which was a much smaller thing, I hadn't really gotten anything of my writing published. It was this kind of a, being pushed into like deep end, because, being interested and going and yes, there were a lot of people loving it. There were a lot of people absolutely hating it, and which kind of now, with more experience and looking back, it's exactly how you want it. Instead of people being indifferent and going like, oh yeah, moving on.
Yeah.
That it evokes passionate reaction. That's already, I feel, a success of some sort. Like there is something there that taps into people's minds and emotions.
Interesting.
But yes, like doing that rookie mistake of going and reading a lot of that, and it was a rough ride. You kind of end up growing a rather thick hide.
Yeah.
Quite fast, and understanding that well, this is part of it, but it's not. It can't define you, and you can't really chase that, because it's impossible. Like to me, this kind of like a big revelation was then, say, going online and looking for commentary on say some of my favorite movies or some of my favorite books. And finding that exact same reaction, that there are plenty of people who, like me, found this wonderful as an experience. Then there are a ton of people who absolutely hated it.
Right.
Passionately hated it, and thought that it was the most horrible things, and realizing that there is no escaping it. Like it's part of us as people, and part of us looking at these things. It's a wonderful richness that there are different opinions and different audiences and different tastes.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't cater for all of that. There is absolutely no way, and you shouldn't even try to. Because that actually will lead you down the path where everything is played safe.
That's right.
There are no sharp edges, and nobody feels anything. And yes, nobody hates it because of that.
Okay, so that's very interesting. And if you don't mind, I'll add on to that question then. So you've created worlds, and not a lot of people can say that, right? I mean, sure, there's maybe hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who can say that, but it's not like it's the whole universe, right? It's not like every person in the world can say, I'm a professional world creator. You are amongst a relatively small number of people who can say, I'm a professional world creator. And when you create these worlds, you hypothetically create a sandbox where other people can play and other people can come and sort of tell their own stories inside your worlds. Now, it's not like a sandbox like Minecraft, right? But the worlds that you've created are expansive enough that someone might write a story about, well, what happened if, Alan turned left instead of right, right? What happened if he did go into that door when he wasn't supposed to go into that door, etc. There's all of those possibility spaces that lend themselves to exploration, to hypothesizing, and to, some form of kind of theory crafting inside of this sandbox, narrative theory crafting. So does that excite you as a world builder? Do you love that, or does it somehow shift your thoughts about the worlds you create? It's alien to me, this, because I don't professionally create worlds. So I'm just wondering how you think about other people coming in and sort of narratively playing, not professionally, but narratively playing inside of the worlds that you've built.
Note that I find that wonderful. As said, coming into this from tabletop role-playing game, kind of playing those games and writing those stories, that is taking a world or creating a world and inviting others, like the whole group of players, to contribute and be part of that experience, and in the best possible way, writing stories about it outside the actual game experience.
Yes.
Which like talking with other people in the industry, designers and writers, surprisingly many, well, maybe it shouldn't be surprising, have a background playing tabletop role-playing games. It's a wonderful school into starting to understand interactivity as part of a narrative, and also it is a very safe place to start creating your own content, writing stories, because everybody is so invested into this game experience. So everybody wants more of it. And so it's a very grateful, positively excited group of people that you are writing a story of your character or something about the world and sharing. And everybody loves it and everybody wants more. So
it's a great point that they are grateful for it. It's like nothing but positive reinforcement, right?
Yes. So it's a very safe place to start trying out. And I think that is part of like people getting that, loving that, but also like getting that encouragement of maybe I should do more of this. Maybe I should do this professionally. So yes, but getting back to idea of fan fiction as an example, I think it's a natural extension of playing. It's almost like, and I totally welcome it because I am interested in different mediums as part of telling these stories. We are bringing these different mediums inside our games, and sometimes we are in a form of transmedia, using other mediums as companions to our game story. So to me, somebody writing more fiction from that world, it's almost like an extension of this for themselves and everybody interested in reading that. Just creating more of the world content. It's a very similar thing to, as with Max Payne or many other games, releasing the level editor and people doing their own mods and creating more content. Writing fan fiction is just another form of that. And once again, people who are enthusiastic and excited about the content we create are very important and vital to us. And we want them to be engaged and like if we can give them content that makes them excited to the point that they start creating their own content, like there is nothing better as feedback, or kind of like thanks, Yeah.
I agree. I'm glad to hear you say that, but it strikes me as very so true, right? Particularly in this era where you can be close to the community if you want to be, and these communities are going to form whether you want them to or not, right? To find ways to not hold them at arm's length, but to integrate into them, to bring them in, to listen to them somehow, to validate them somehow, but more importantly, to be nourished by them, right? I couldn't agree more that it's such a huge opportunity in our industry, in our space. And so I assume that some parts of that have probably peppered your thoughts and conversations about the Remedy connected universe, which is where I want to take our conversation.
I mean,
next.
it's fascinating. I mean, just kind of going back to the previous point, still, the fact that there are people building mods, the fact that there are people writing fanfic, the fact that there are people, embracing the photo mode and taking awesome, gloriously beautiful pictures that you couldn't even imagine being possible out of your game. And then say people, doing cosplay of the characters you have created. All of these, people who are enthusiastic and find the angle that works for them to be closer to this experience and excited about this experience. It's all wonderful. I feel. But what's fascinating to me also that if we look at, say, Control or Alan Wake even, that now we have the remastered out, in some ways, in both of them, I felt from the storytelling side, the idea of building a mystery was important, because to me, the best form of fiction that I get excited about and engage with is often a mystery where I am struggling to understand where it's going. I'm excited to find out. I can't really, I'm most entertained when I feel an experience is maybe just tiny bit too smart for me to kind of like, and I'm trying and I'm really excited and I'm coming up with ideas and then if it manages still to surprise me, I'm very satisfied. And so to me as a creator, like an exciting idea is to create a deep mystery that people can dive in and speculate about and wonder about, that this sense of wonder. And that was a big part of, well, I mean, even in Max Payne, obviously we are in this kind of a hard-boiled crime thriller.
Sure.
But it's a detective story and we don't know who did it.
Yeah.
And we are on that journey, but then even more maybe on metaphysical and deeper level in Alan Wake, we are questioning what is real and what is fiction, and even more I feel in Control. We very, very purposefully wanted to create a deep world with a lot of mystery and the kind of like the style of telling that story and those stories is that we only get fragmented view into it and we get theories that by its very nature, Federal Bureau of Control is trying to understand very hard to understand things, and they have theories, but are they the ultimate truth? Or is this just speculation? And this, to me, as an idea, was just ripe for our audience to do their own speculation, to form theories, to piece certain pieces together and go online into Reddit and write about it, or do an awesome video going through the theory and doing that crazy mind map of red string going about and trying to and then other parts of community responding to that and coming up with an alternate theory because they have found certain other pieces. To me, that is exciting. Not necessarily on the level of really going in and trying to kind of like, find the faults or flaws in somebody's theory, just being really, really happy that people are engaged and
that it worked, right?
wanting to do that. And that to me is wonderful.
It's made me think of two things, and I'll drop these out really quickly. I'd love to see what you think. So the first is, it's almost like mystery novels were somehow the first, interactive stories, because you're not passive, right? Whether you mean to or not, you are participating by thinking through, is it left? Is it right? Was it her? Was it him? Was it this? Was it that? Right?
Yes.
So the mystery novel almost in some ways sort of set the stage for video games in certain ways, certainly from a narrative point of view. And then the other thing is, when I hear you talk about mystery and the unknowns and intentionally creating that as seeds for fan theory and for speculation and for exploration, it reminds me of some of the talks I've heard. The guy who created Lost,
J.J. Abrams.
Oh, thank you, J.J. Right. Yeah. It reminds me of some of the things I remember hearing him talk about as well. Right, this idea. What did he call it? The mystery box, right? That there are, that having mystery, having unknowns in your narrative is such an invitation for communal participation, and it can't help but expand somewhat the player's involvement or the watcher's involvement in your narrative space.
Yeah, very much so, and I think that TV shows, Lost being a great example that kind of took this clear step, intentionally quite complex. I think that audiences these days have also grown into that.
Absolutely.
And are quite a bit more savvy into piecing things together and breaking things down. And intentionally seeing in many shows that small clues, Easter eggs, in
Easter
a way,
eggs.
Are being hidden so that you actually need to kind of be looking and zooming in and stopping. And did you see that can there? And it has now a different label that it used to have, which means that this timeline is actually different, where we saw the same thing happen before. And this very complicated, breakdowns being done by the fans. And then they are engaged, and that's an important part of the experience.
Absolutely. Well, so let's dive into Easter eggs, and I definitely want to talk about this. So, developers, creators have been inserting references and Easter eggs to past games into their projects for years. I would say you guys are really good at that. You talked a little bit about the process, right? So, you go and you write some stuff on a whiteboard, and you took some photos and you insert it and that kind of thing. I'm just wondering if you want to expand on that at all. It seems like there's a way to do it really well. Some people do it really well. And then, maybe others try and do it well. And there seems to be an art form to creating those connections that are strong enough that players find them, right? So they're not so hidden that nobody ever finds it. And yet they're subtle enough that when players make the connection, they feel really smart. So is there an art form you can talk about at sort of finding the right level of sophistication of the Easter egg or of the, whatever internal reference?
Yeah, I think that there is. Like still going back to what you said about a mystery story being an interactive experience. To me, like back at the university and studying literature and through that finding my way to postmodern writing, that and being in an academic environment where a big part of it is to analyze and write an essay of something, which is like breaking it down and forming theories, exactly what we have been talking about. And to me, it just felt like it was almost like, in many cases, postmodern writing is made for that. It's almost felt like, well, now I'm playing a game with the author. And there are all kinds of weird connections and dreamlike layers and symbolism inserted into this story that can be kind of broken down and analyzed, and you can form this theory of what does this mean and how does it connect. And that to me was really exciting. And I feel that is like just being excited about that. That is very much in my mind what I'm doing with Easter eggs when I'm thinking about that it is a further layer of this layered, fragmented experience playing a game. It's a game within a game. And yes, I agree that there are different ways of approaching it. That there is a way of approaching it like, this is a funny thing, ha ha, let's put this funny picture here. But that's not really the kind of Easter egg that excites me. To me, the idea always is that on some level, this is a symbol, an echo, a reflection, a thought that kind of like, this is the story and here is our hero. But as an audience, you can step back and go like, wait a minute, interesting theory as an example is that it keeps popping up sometimes that I'm asked the question of like, was Max Payne just crazy person who murdered his family? And please answer me. I never do, and I won't now, because I think that that's not the intent of the story, of course, but that thought, that the idea of when you look at things and you start thinking about these different things, like what if, or it's interesting to me. Max as a character is a very conflicted person, and he is carrying a huge amount of guilt on his back. He has failed, and his family is dead. So it's a natural psychological thing for him to feel guilty, and then that guilt taken into a nightmare or dream suddenly is like he did it. And thinking about it from these different perspectives, going into these psychological layers and entertaining these different thoughts and putting them into the world as Easter eggs, almost like these weird echoes, and they are not definite, but they are introduced, they're incepting a thought into your mind. And that's something. And that's the wonderful part about video game worlds and depth of storytelling, that you can have all kinds of things. You have the primary narrative, but then you have all kinds of things that strike a chord on emotional level or make you wonder. And all of that is part of the package. And all of that is, at the end, you have it in your mind. And I would love to have this idea that the stories we tell through our games linger. That this idea that it's not conclusively, well, that was a happy ending and that was a nice experience, moving on to the next one. But hopefully people will come back to it, later, weeks later, or even years later, going like, yeah, this emotion like reminds me of something, or made me think the other way back to this experience and this story. And there were these interesting aspects to it. And just like it's these elements inserted. And as an example, once again, like I'm using these old examples, like we have plenty more in the more recent games, but trying not to spoil things too much. But in Max Payne, to me, that was also the in-game television shows, which has certainly been a interesting thread to me in all of our games. That game is set in a modern present-day world, something along those lines, and all of these different medias are very much present in our lives. It would feel like something is missing if we didn't have them in the game world.
Yeah.
And then, as an example, like Max Payne's world being so kind of almost like, he's turned inwards and he has this nightmare inside him. it's all told from filtered through his mind and his narrative. He's telling the story.
Absolutely.
So I feel that there are so many elements there that are they, it's constant night. It can't possibly be constant night, but we are only seeing night. In the first game, it's the worst winter storm in the century. Is it really a worst winter storm in the century, or is this the turmoil he has inside him?
Absolutely.
So that it feels like that? And then suddenly we start having these TV shows in various genres like costume drama and cartoon and psycho thriller and all of these. And somehow when you watch them, they all in their own genre ways echo him and his situation. Do they really? Or is he just so wrapped up in this that they seem to him that he finds these pieces out of them? And they are kind of Easter eggs to me. But at the same time, they are kind of inserting commentary on some level into this experience. And also these days, now getting into Remedy Connected Universe. Is that also, it's fascinating to me to explore these ideas where we could go and kind of like hanging these things in there. Yes, we have a plan going forward, sometimes quite far, but it's still interesting to entertain these ideas that, maybe, this would be a possibility. And it lends itself to further speculation, like, are they setting this up? And maybe we are, but maybe it's in a different context that you would be expecting, which is Easter eggs in a way, but also from slightly different perspective.
So then, I guess just to make it explicit, the Remedy Connected Universe sort of asserts that there are, frankly, strong connections between the games that have come before, and that they are part of a larger connected universe going forward, right? Is that safe to say?
Well, as far of the actual brands that are in our control
yes,
and what we own, of course, because that is always just the reality of the
obviously.
World, which currently what we have publicly stated is Alan Wake and Control.
Yep. So by asserting that Alan Wake and Control are part of the same universe and that there's other games that will sit inside this connected universe, obviously one of the things you're doing is you're giving huge fuel to the fire of fan speculation and fan fiction and all the stuff we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes, right? Because now you're saying this is canon. These connections are canon. So it's not just hypothesis, it's canon. What else you got, right? So of course it's going to set the forums aflame, right? Of course Reddit's going to go on fire with that, which is awesome. Are there other explicit goals of the connected universe that you want to talk about? Or do you feel like we've talked, in talking about fan fiction and in talking about community and in talking about sort of fandom in general, are there other explicit goals that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I like, for us, the idea of Remedy Connected Universe has been around for quite a while. And we've been, talking about it as an idea. And then, like, obviously now with Control coming out, we felt that now is the right time. And now we are in a position to make this very concrete and kind of like officially say this out loud. And it has come from this idea of putting these Easter eggs in and being fascinated about it, but growing in ambition and growing into a bigger thing and loving bigger stories and deeper worlds as a fan, wanting to take these steps into that direction. I think that, the sensible idea here, which I very much agree with, is that there are these layers in these experiences, and certainly we can imagine sometime in the distant future that we would do our version of, say, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Avengers crossover event. But I don't think that we are there yet. And I think that where we are is that whenever we do a game like Control, it needs to be approachable and exciting to everybody out there who have not necessarily played any previous Remedy games. Just as an idea, just as an introduction to a character, like main character and character gallery, and coming in, and it needs to be exciting on its own. Okay. But then we have this other layer, a growing layer, I would say, of bigger universe material that are opening these doors, building these connections, either projecting forward or kind of like connecting backwards and building this depth and connection points as a reward for our long-standing fans coming in and finding that and being rewarded by that and finding these like more fuel to the fire and more speculation and more theories coming together, that how do these work together. Adding this layer in there, I think that the beauty of it is also that which very much why a big part of also the motivation why now it felt like the right time to create a remastered version of the original Alan Wake. When we were in position now to release it on different platforms, like PlayStation as an example, where Alan Wake experiences have never been before, but Control introducing Alan Wake as a side thing in the experience, then doing that DLC that was very much a small crossover event between Control and Alan Wake.
Super cool.
And now being in a position of bringing back, yes, for long-standing fans who love Alan Wake and have been asking for remastered version for a long time, but also now for a whole new audience, getting to know Alan Wake in Control, true Control, and being able to provide them this opportunity. Well, we were referring to this story and this character.
Now you can dive in.
Here is actually this remastered version of the original game. If this sparked your interest, and now you can go and experience this, and then maybe what you experienced firsthand in Control, you'll get to see that in new light.
That's right.
And so it keeps our previous games maybe more relevant and part of the conversation going forward.
It's not just a fresh coat of paint; it's a fresh lens.
Yes, there are new reasons to go back and play it.
Absolutely.
Beyond just like refreshing the look of it.
That's great. That's wonderful. Gosh, I could talk for ages about all of this. I am, however, cognizant of the time that we have remaining. I guess if I had one closing question, it's about going outside of Remedy's universe, right? So we've talked so much about the interconnections, the Easter eggs, the things you directly control. And yet, we couldn't be on the kind of this podcast talking about the future of entertainment and not talk about brand crossovers or metaversal whatevers. Like it's everywhere, right? We've got Wolverine and Superman fighting inside of Fortnite, and both major entertainment stakeholders somehow calling it canon, and those of us who kind of follow the stories kind of scratching our heads and going, what the heck does that mean? So, as a creator, I don't know, Alan Wake and Fortnite fighting Superman, like what is that? Yes, okay, perfect. That's a big thumbs up from you. That's great.
Yeah, obviously we have the absolute pleasure of working with Epic now as our publisher for Alan Wake Remastered. I think it's interesting. I think that it is part of the current form of entertainment and like this idea of meta worlds in strange ways. I opportunities for crossovers that more are just maybe fun, but I bet that we will see more ambitious ones emerging slowly. I mean, like it's not the same thing, but just seeing, as how ambitious and huge like Marvel Cinematic Universe, the number of movies that are connected to each other, almost like this was a huge TV show.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting idea. And so, these different kind of like bigger worlds emerging that you both in games and in other mediums and like coming together in various ways, like obviously, I think that we are just fumblingly like experiencing first steps in this, and it's fascinating and it's really exciting to see where that's gonna go. I think that it will go into exciting places in the coming years. Alan Wake in Fortnite. I mean, tonally, of course, they have two very different things.
Absolutely.
Although, we did the side kind of a spin-off thing with Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which you could argue is actually maybe a half step closer as an experience to tonally what Fortnite is. I see no objection in that, and I just see that if that's an opportunity, like I mean, somebody who isn't into that, but is very much into this kind of like psychological, supernatural thriller experience of Alan Wake, I struggle to see how that would harm their experience. I think that sometimes maybe us as an audience don't realize maybe the power we have of choosing. I think that we have the power. I think that we have the power. Sometimes we act like we didn't. Like we go like, well, that came out and now this whole thing is spoiled to me. Mm-hmm. Or we feel like, now I have to trudge through this, even if this isn't my thing, because it's kind of connected. I feel that we are the masters of the universe as like,
it exists in our head,
as the audience, and we can freely choose. This is my version. Like in some concrete ways, there's been great movies or great TV shows made based on a book, and I'm a huge lover of books. Mm-hmm. But because there is so much content, and I've started watching an adaptation of something and found it thrilling, I've just made the conscious decision, I'm not going to read the books because I have a huge pile of books to read. And I'm just, for me, this is going to be a TV show. And I love it. And from that perspective, if there is a movie in a series that isn't exactly spot on for me, I can choose to say that's like, I'll just treasure this part of the experience, and that's the wonderful part.
And so, lovely way
like this dream of Alan Wake in a fortnight, if that will get some people who are into Fortnite, who have not been taught about Alan Wake, and suddenly they are like, what is this? I'll try this out. Oh my God, I love this. Like, I think that would be a wonderful thing. And if there are people who go like, what is this Alan Wake in Fortnite?
Fine.
You are free to ignore. You can focus on Alan Wake as the experience. Like we are totally free to make these choices. And even like going back to Max Payne, then in Max Payne 2 that turned 18 years yesterday. We had this idea, kind of an Easter egg, that yes, it's a film noir story. To me, film noir stories don't have happy endings, and it ended with a very dark ending. And then, but if you play it through 3 times on the hardest difficulty, suddenly you get an alternate ending where Mona Sack survives.
Yep.
And it's a happy ending. It's a reward to you. And there are so many fans out there constantly coming to me asking, like, please tell me this is canon. Like that I worked so hard. I worked so hard, and I want Mona to be alive. And usually, like, I apologize to all of you. I never reply. I feel it's your experience now. You are playing it. I'm not the one to tell you what is canon in this particular game. You choose. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want this to be your version and you are happy with it, it's your version. If you prefer the original ending, darker ending for your film noir experience, you can choose that to be the ending.
And you will find a micro community who agrees with you no matter what your worldview of it is.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's your choice.
You'll find your tribe. Okay, Sam, we are unfortunately out of time. This has been amazing. It's been entertaining. It's been insightful. I could listen to you talk about narrative and story in games and Remedy's way of thinking about it and your particular lens on crafting those worlds forever. But for now, I'll have to say thank you very much for your time. All the best in future projects. And thanks for joining us today. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you, Ben. This was wonderful and exciting.
Bye.
Goodbye.
All right. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the interview. It was a long one. It was an exciting one. But as is usually the case, I loved it. I had a blast doing it. If you made it this far, I hope you got something out of it as well. And as I said in the intro, this is our last guest of the year. We will have one more sort of wrap up, which will be a shorter podcast. It'll be just me blathering on about all of the stuff I learned over the year and all of the things that I found the most exciting through all of the guests. A sort of year in review, as it were. I don't imagine I'll be quite as entertaining and exciting, as insightful as some of these amazing guests that I've had the pleasure of interviewing over the year. But if you want a TLDR, a sort of summary of the year, and you don't have time to go back and listen to all the podcasts, and you just want the sort of Coles notes, I'll do my best to pull out some of the top learnings and share those. And with that, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening or morning, depending on where you are when you're listening. And we'll talk to you again real soon. All right. Bye.